If you've ever blasted through Night City thinking, man, this chaos would be even better with a crew, you're not alone there, but there are also just as many players out there who are skeptical about multiplayer in the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. But this week's breadcrumbs from CD Projekt Red do make the possibility of multiplayer in the next game feel a bit less distant. A new job listing for a lead network engineer on Cyberpunk 2 spells out responsibilities like designing online systems, leading a team to build and optimize multiplayer, and here's the kicker, developing matchmaking. Nobody says matchmaking, of course, unless players are actually meant to find each other in game. And of course, this isn't an announcement of any kind, but it's the loudest hint yet that Cyberpunk 2 could bring an online component to the franchise. Now, it's no secret that this is a bit of a divisive issue in the Cyberpunk community, and many, including myself, don't really want multiplayer to take away from the single-player aspects of this upcoming game. We know that Grand Theft Auto 5 was supposed to get several single-player DLCs originally, but they were scrapped and more GTA Online content was planned in its place after they eventually discovered just how much money the online mode could make them. But let's unpack what was posted by CD Projekt Red in this job listing, why it matters, how we got here, and what multiplayer could realistically look like in the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077. But before we get into it, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest Cyberpunk news. And if you want to further support the channel, consider becoming a member for early access on every video, members only content, your name in the credits, the ability to write in and have your comments featured, and access to the Discord community. The headline's pretty simple. CDPR is hiring a lead network engineer for Cyberpunk 2. The body text is where it gets pretty spicy. The role calls for designing and implementing scalable online architecture, delivering low latency, high performance experiences, and guiding the team to develop and optimize multiplayer systems, including matchmaking. That doesn't seem like vague fluff. That seems like concrete language you use when you want people in the same session without lag and with a fair chance of finding equally skilled opponents or compatible teammates. We've seen other online features use a catch-all term before for things like cloud saves or live events, and it sounds like this isn't that. When a studio is worried about latency, bandwidth, and server performance, it seems to be building something interactive and persistent in this new game, not just a menu that fetches your new player skin from a server. But now, you've been around the block enough to know how this really goes. A studio posts a job ad, fans connect the dots, and then PR steps in to say we're exploring possibilities. Nothing to announce just yet. And that's all fair and true. Job listings are not launch trailers. Plans can evolve, get scoped down, or split into a standalone mode, especially since Cyberpunk 2 just now entered pre-production this year, and the release for this game is likely around 2029 to 2031. And at this point, that's still many years away, and many things can change by then. And we've already seen Cyberpunk's multiplayer ambitions shelved once already during the long patchback from 2020's a rough launch, so obviously temper the hype, but don't ignore the signals altogether. You don't staff a team lead and build a team around them unless online systems are a serious pillar of the game's design, and CDPR has said in the past that they are obviously interested in adding some sort of multiplayer component to future games in the Cyberpunk and the Witcher series. Years ago, CD Projekt Red flirted with multiplayer for Cyberpunk 2077 when it was originally releasing. It was at one point imagined as either a mode or a spin-off, then quietly cancelled while the studio focused on fixing the base game and shipping the Phantom Liberty expansion. Fast forward to 2024, and leadership openly said multiplayer was being considered for Cyberpunk 2. That was the first smoke. This week's listing is the first flicker of flame. It tells us that the conversation moved from maybe to let's build a foundation at the very least. But obviously, we don't know yet what Cyberpunk multiplayer would actually look like in this upcoming game, but there are several different directions the studio could choose to go with this. The neat thing as Cyberpunk as a setting is how naturally it leans into cooperative chaos, and if they really wanted to, they could probably pull this off. But of course, there are also many other reasons to be skeptical about multiplayer in a single-player game, especially since the base of the game and the base of this series is being built off single-player, story-driven experiences. And obviously, I'm a bit skeptical. I don't really know what direction they'll go with this, but I don't know, it's interesting to talk about at the very least. And I guess you could kind of picture it. 4 edge runners creeping through a corpo campus with synchronized quick hacks, or a stealth-heavy duo ghosting a vault while a third player spoofs cameras and a fourth runs interference on the street. And at the very least, GTA Online proved that the appetite for open-world heist-type games that escalate from quiet to catastrophic. Night City's verticality, hacking, and cyberware make that loop feel distinct instead of derivative. You can also imagine some competitive modes that don't just copy deathmatch. There could be several ways that the developers can make the Cyberpunk multiplayer experience feel very unique to the player. Think about some sort of mode that's Netrunner versus Netrunner territory control, where you fight for local network dominance by daisy chaining relays, or maybe even some sort of car combat sprints through Watson using modded vehicles and EMP traps. And even a tactical round-based mode where cyberware cooldowns and smart weapon angles matter more than raw aim could definitely work here. But obviously none of this is confirmed, but the design space is definitely there, and it's very cyberpunk without breaking the fantasy of the world. There's also another universe where online systems actually means a lightly connected single-player experience. Think leaderboards for time trial courier runs, asynchronous contracts where your custom gigs seed into other players' worlds, and also shared community content for outfits, weapons, skins, and apartment decor. Download it all in-game with ratings and rotation, not walled off to an external website. But we have seen several other games run largely single-player with a backbone of always online challenges and live service cadence. But this listing focuses on matchmaking, and that says real-time multiplayer to me at least. But CD Projekt Red could also layer that on top of a softer online feature to keep the city feeling alive between big drops. If CDPR is serious, the tech problems to solve are classic but brutal. Night City style worlds involve dense crowds, vehicle AI, vertical interiors, and tons of physics and particles. Add in latency to that super problems and you've got a recipe for jank, of course unless you're ruthless about what's authoritative server side and what's client side illusion. Low latency design means aggressive prediction, rollback for hit scan and melee, and smart netcode that prioritizes essential data packets over cosmetic fluff. It means mitigation for desync when a mantis blade lunge, a double jump, and a smart gun micro missile all resolve in the same half-second tick. It means rethinking AI so enemies don't teleport or teleportably cheat when someone lags. The listing's language, latency, bandwidth, server performance reads like a team building those answers now, not figuring it out later. Then there's the design pillar of it all. Cyberpunk's core fantasy is my build, my choice, my consequences. That's obviously easy in single player when you can break balance in the game in the name of fun. In multiplayer, you can't let a single cyberware chain turn a match into one player's highlight reel every single round, so you obviously need some sort of philosophy to work around. Either you segment PvP away from the sandbox and create bespoke rules, or you make the co-op the star and let players feel gloriously broken together against a hardened PvE backdrop. If I had to bet right now, I'd expect PvE co-op to land first. It preserves the power fantasy, it's easier to tune, and it lets CD Projekt Red play to strengths in the storytelling and set-piece mission design. PvP can layer in later, smaller and weirder, more Netrunner chess or vehicle combat league than sweaty cyber CS. Nothing here undercuts the expectation that Cyberpunk 2 will still be a story-forward RPG that you can play entirely solo. That's CD Projekt Red's identity, and they definitely know it. The most common fear whenever a beloved single-player series dabbles in online is that the campaign single-player content gets sliced up into feed the mode with better monetization hooks in the long run. And I think in this case, that would be a huge mistake for them to make. The right move for Cyberpunk 2 is single-player as the spine, online as additive, with sharp creative boundaries between the two, of course. I don't want any Cyberpunk multiplayer taking away from the single player story or cancel any single player DLCs like it happened in GTA 5. But all of this spins while another giant orbits the schedule, The Witcher 4. It's the studio's largest team right now, it's further along in development, and it will almost certainly ship sometime after 2026 and well before Cyberpunk 2's release. And that also tells you something about Cyberpunk's timeline. A lead network engineer joining now means that the online stack is getting architectured during pre-production, not stapled on at the end. That probably seems healthy. It also means you shouldn't expect to play anything for years. The best signal you can ask for at this stage is exactly what you're seeing. Hiring senior roles and building pillars early. Let's tackle the elephant in the room. Multiplayer often brings some sort of monetization levers with it, and Cyberpunk's fashion game is definitely strong, and cosmetic stores are probably the industry's least toxic option when it comes to monetization. If CDPR does go online, the cleanest path is a cosmetic first model in a self-contained mode, no pay to win, no stat boosters leaking back into the single player experience. Think visible flair that fits the brand. Neon trench coats, custom vehicle liveries, cyberware VFX, apartment decor drops, maybe seasonal streetwear capsules that lean into Night City's subcultures. Keep the story content premium and separate, keep the cosmetics honest, and players will definitely meet you halfway. But we also don't want stuff that used to be free content suddenly get locked behind a paywall. That would be very frustrating for most players. Fans have been quietly building dream lists for the sequel for years now. Seamless co-op stealth where one player hacks doors while another pickpockets access chips. heists that unfold across multiple districts with branching failure states rather than forced restart conditions, and also some car combat that finally gives vehicles a true purpose beyond just fast travel and radio vibes. And if CDPR wants to get really spicy here, they could make some sort of creator pipeline where verified creators can ship curated co-op missions the same way now that they ship approved mods. The tech isn't trivial, but the appetite is definitely there. But of course, if they make some sort of curated platform like that, it sounds like something like the Creations platform from Bethesda games. So of course, they're gonna have to police it a lot better than Bethesda has, because there is a lot of junk on those creation platforms that aren't really worth the squeeze. But let's be brutally clear, CD Projekt Red has not announced multiplayer for Cyberpunk 2 just yet. A job listing implies intent, not inevitability. Features get cut, designs pivot, priorities shift with playtest and producer realities. And of course, that all happened with Cyberpunk 2077. At this point in time, the safest read is this: the studio is actively investing in online systems for Cyberpunk 2, with multiplayer as a design target, and it wants someone to lead the engineering charge in this project. That's enough to be excited or worried about, of course. It's not enough to mark your calendars though just yet. As exciting or worrying as online multiplayer sounds for Cyberpunk 2, it's worth remembering that it could introduce a whole new set of issues to the game. Cyberpunk has always thrived as a single-player experience, letting players lose themselves in the story and roleplay at their own pace. Adding multiplayer could risk shifting resources away from the narrative and immersion that made the first game so iconic. On top of that, balancing servers, avoiding cheaters, and designing systems that actually feel cyberpunk instead of just another GTA Online clone will be a monumental challenge for the team at CD Projekt Red. If the team doesn't nail it, multiplayer could dilute the sequel rather than enhance it in an overall capacity. And the last thing we want as Cyberpunk 2 is for multiplayer to detract from the traditional single-player experience in the game. Here's another fun little story to kind of add on to this video. Keanu Reeves has made it clear that he's not done with the world of Cyberpunk just yet, of course if they want him. In a recent interview promoting his film Good Fortune, Reeves said he would absolutely love to return as Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk 2. That's a pretty big statement considering how central Johnny was to the original game's story, and it instantly sparked speculation about how CD Projekt Red could actually bring him back in the future game. The question of course is whether Johnny should return. Depending on which ending of Cyberpunk 2077 CDPR makes canon, of course they would probably kind of have to, Johnny's arc could be considered complete at this point. But this is Cyberpunk. We're talking about digital ghosts, hacked minds, and personality constructs living inside chips. If Keanu Reeves is on board and the writers can find a clever angle, Johnny Silverhand could easily find his way back into the sequel, whether as a full companion, a fleeting cameo, or something more experimental. But in my opinion, I think the best fit for Johnny Silverhand could be in some sort of flashback sequence to 2023 or sometime around there. If he is in the modern day section of the game, then I would think that CD Projekt Red would have to canonize an ending to Cyberpunk 2077's story. Alongside all of these rumors, CD Projekt Red has also quietly been stacking its roster of developers, and both Cyberpunk 2 and The Witcher 4 are definitely benefiting. According to the company's most recent financial report, the total headcount across all projects is now pushing almost 800 developers, with Cyberpunk's 2 team jumping from 96 to 116 developers over the summer. The Witcher 4 obviously still takes the lion's share of resources, with more than 440 people working on it at this point in time, but the steady growth of Cyberpunk 2 shows that the sequel is slowly gaining momentum. It's also a big turnaround from just 2 years ago when CD Projekt Red was cutting staff after the messy launch of Cyberpunk 2077. Now the studio is investing heavy in both franchises, with more hires expected by the end of this year. And that doesn't mean we'll be playing these games anytime soon. The Witcher 4 probably won't arrive before 2027, and Cyberpunk 2 is still probably years out, possibly closer to 2030. But the slow and steady ramp up of their developer numbers suggests that CDPR is taking the long road to get things right. Cyberpunk 2 is early in development, and The Witcher 4 is the current flagship title that will release first, but the multiplayer foundation is being laid now, obviously not finished, and that's good news. Tacking online on at the end of the development rarely works out for anybody, but building it from the start gives it some sort of chance to feel native to the world instead of an awkward add-on. The reality is that we're still years out, but you should want these hires to happen now, not later. It means the decision about what Cyberpunk Online is and what it is not will be technical and creative, not just commercial. For a long time, Cyberpunk multiplayer was a what if, and we whispered about it in the background. And while modders tried to glue co-op into a single-player RPG, it really is taking some sort of final shape here. And this week with the job listing, it became something a bit more tangible. A team is being formed, a leader is being hired, and matchmaking is on the whiteboard. And in a studio that's publicly said in the past it's considering multiplayer for the sequel, that matters. But keep your expectations realistic here, and keep them pointed in the right direction, because if CDPR threads the needle single player first, and then online done with taste and tech, the next time you run around the neon lit streets of Night City, you might hear 3 other mics crackle to life and someone say, "Ready when you are." If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest Cyberpunk news. And if you're looking for something else to watch, click one of the videos you're seeing on screen right now. I will see you there. Also, a huge thank you to all the amazing channel members.